Good evening. Welcome back to another Right Recruiter webinar. My name is Steve Outhouse, part of the Right Recruiter team. Really glad you're here joining us this evening, or perhaps you're watching this on demand later on. We're glad that you're watching it either way. For those of you who might be new to our kind of new season of Right Recruiter webinars and Right Recruiter, our aim is to connect great conservative staffers with great conservative jobs. But we also want to invest in those staffers and kind of help everyone who wants to serve in the political staffer capacity within the conservative movement, kind of grow and be the best staffers that they can possibly be, and also the best campaigners that they can be. And we have sort of the dual stream on that. I'm going to get into more about our special focus tonight on helping staffers develop. But first, I do want to thank our sponsor for the webinar today, and that's Interseed Communication. And I'm going to be transparent. That is also my company, but we are paying the cost for tonight. So if you are a company that would like to sponsor an upcoming webinar, please let me know. We're happy to talk to you about that. But Interseed Communication can offer communication services to elected official offices in a nonpartisan fashion. Anything you need there. So happy to talk to you about that if you're of interest. Now, I spent really several decades now, or a couple decades, in conservative politics. And I know it's really like a job unlike any other. It's demanding, it's rewarding, it's often exhausting. But in all the roles I've held, so often I was very fortunate and blessed to have someone who was willing to show me the ropes and just sort of make all the difference with just helping me navigate certain situations. I could sit here and list dozens of conservative staffers and strategists who were really generous with their time and advice. And that's the reason why I'm here today. And that's the spirit behind these webinars, and especially this one. So tonight, I'm joined by two very special guests who've taken time out of their busy schedules to share what they wish they'd known when they first started as political staffers. And I'll introduce them both, and then we'll jump right into the discussion to make the most of our time tonight. So first, we have Michael Bailey. And Michael truly defines what it means to have done it all. So when the Conservatives were in government, he and I were working together then, and he coordinated question period. He worked in multiple departments, managed complex files, including at Justice and Environment. Not easy ones for sure. Not everyone in the Hill gets this far into their career with a strong reputation, but Michael has spent over 20 years in federal politics and continues to have a reputation as someone who can get things done quietly and effectively. So we'll see if we can end that reputation tonight, Michael, and see how things go. If the words quietly and effectively, though, can describe you after 2 decades on the Hill, you're definitely doing something right. And Michael now serves as Director of Parliamentary Affairs to MP Todd Doherty. So welcome, Michael. Glad to have you here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Mr. Outhouse.
Oh, excellent. We're going to be more
formal. A
formal.
Plug, though, I just want to say that I've used your company in a number of campaigns, and you guys are absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'll slip you a little something through the e-transfer later on. So
I'm looking right now.
You're okay. You sent me the funding request. Our other guest is also living proof of how important it is once you get your foot in the door to keep making the most of it. And Sarah Honey started as an intern and has been on an upward trajectory ever since. She quickly became National Conservative Caucus Coordinator, organizing everything from major staff conferences to legendary Christmas parties with over 1,000 guests, all thanks to her exceptional organizational skills. And I know that to be true, and because I was fortunate enough to hire Sarah to be our caucus liaison when I was chief of staff for then Minister Pierre Poilievre, who's now our leader. And for those of you who know our leader, knows that he cares deeply about responding to caucus requests and making sure that was done promptly. So Sarah was always hopping and did a fantastic job in getting caucus members the info they needed from a very big and important department. So she also has done it all, it seems. So she's worked both in her home riding. She's handled casework in Ottawa, where she now leads communications for MP Mark Strahl. She has a new role in her life. And about the past 3 months, she's on mat leave, and she's a mom to Jack, who is adorable. If you follow Sarah on social media, you'll know that. And Sarah is the only person I know personally who had her Taylor Swift concert tickets canceled due to a terror threat. So if it can happen in politics, it's probably happened to one of our guests. So you can start dropping your questions into the chat, and we'll get into that discussion. And we're glad to take your questions tonight. So Sarah, welcome to you as well.
Thank you, Steve. And may I just say that you're the best chief of staff that I've ever worked with.
you got this is looking a little too staged. So we should have agreed to space those out a little bit more. But thank you. So, so while we're waiting for some questions to come into the chat here, I just wanted to kind of get things started. We'd love to hear people's stories about how you became a political staffer, because it is truly different for everyone. And we've had, a lot of guests in our earlier webinars, and the stories are always slightly different. So, Sarah, how about we start with you? How did you get to be a Hill staffer?
Sure. So when I moved to Ottawa, I moved to Ottawa from Cobourg to go to Carleton University. If there's any Carleton people that go there or alums, just give a shout out in the chat. I'd love to know. Basically, was not into politics at all. Walked the quad during one of the Spirit days and looked at the different political parties' tables. Talked to the people at the local Carleton campus conservatives, and knew that was my party. And then I just jumped in with both feet. I got involved in volunteering. I said yes to every possible opportunity they had. It's like, you want to get on a bus at 6 a.m. and go door knock in Toronto on a Saturday? Sure. And I just jumped in. And then I joined the Conservative Party internship. Loved it so much. I came back for a second summer and then got into politics full time, working for my home MP at the time, who was Rick Norlock.
Excellent. Okay, Mr. Bailey. Oh, we got our first Carleton represent there in the chat from Chad. So there you go, Chad.
Yay,
let's go Carleton. Let's go Carleton.
Any Mount St. Vincent alum in the chat, let me know. Anyway, Mr. Bailey, how about you? How did you get into staffing?
You know what? Completely different than Sarah. We didn't watch sports. We didn't watch hockey. We didn't watch football when I was growing up. We watched Question Period. We watched live debates in the house. I can remember the night that the bells were ringing all night, and my nanny was like, "Oh my God, Joe Clark's going to lose the government." And I think it was 79, so that dates me a bit. I don't look that old, Steve, I know.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and so I, like Sarah, went to Carleton. I applied to do the Carleton Leeds Exchange, which was 6 months on Parliament Hill and then 6 months in London, England. And so I was here on the Hill doing my first 6 months, and a job in another MP's office came up, and I really wanted to meet this guy. And so I drafted up a resume and took it over to their center block office and ended up sitting down and just talking with his chief of staff for about 2.5 hours and got the job. I've been here ever since.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I did graduate though, but not
okay. Congrats on that. Another Carleton alumni. So congrats to, or shout out to Brittany Allison, who's also commented that so you've got at least 2 Carleton.
All right, let's go, Brittany.
There we go. Michael, maybe I'll stick with you for a little bit here. Now, things I'm sure have changed in the past, while, being on the Hill and so on. And we have people on this call and will be watching this on the replay later on who come from across the country, working at different legislatures and so on. So things will be a little bit different kind of across the country. But tonight, the focus is primarily on Parliament Hill. Can you walk us through what are generally the positions that are available in an MP's office on the Hill?
Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to have essentially an executive assistant, somebody who manages the calendar, takes care of the budget, helps out scheduling the travel, etc. And then a legislative assistant, somebody who's going to do your work in committee, help you prepare your questions, research the guests that are coming, witnesses, and then communications. When I started on the Hill, the legislative assistant did the communications work as well. And some offices today still function like that. But when I was here, you didn't have a 24-hour news cycle and social media. And that has completely changed the game. Like, it's unbelievable. So most offices usually have about 3 people on the Hill.
Okay. Sarah, I think you want to add to that, other sort of angles, or?
Just to build on what Michael was saying, I am a communications assistant. I would call it more of a director, though, because it's like a one-person siloed role in my office, and it has become its own beast. Like, managing social media, and then things are always changing. On top of that, the website, video creation development, like, it's just like, because of the 24-hour news cycle and because social media is always going, including on weekends, it's just, it has to be just, one person, at least one person's responsibility. So, but yeah, you covered them all, Michael. So
Just to add to what you were saying, like in our office, I'll do some of the light work, and we have a Cam Wilcox who started about a year and a half ago and is absolutely phenomenal. He does most of the committee prep and stuff in the social media, but it's so much easier when you have two people in an office that can clip the videos coming out of committee as they're happening, and then somebody at committee who can get the context of what's being said and do the post. And so you can get your post out first. So it's just social media has completely changed the game for everything.
So let's build on that. And we got a good question in the chat there. If people want to keep tossing some more in, we're going to get to those in a minute. But it triggered a thought when you were both talking about that, about how communications and social media is so important now within the the elected world. How do you balance sort of being the voice for someone? And you're like, how do you get to know your member of parliament's voice? How do you get to know what they want to post, don't want to post? What do you need to check with them? What do they trust you with? Like, how does that whole dance play out? And Sarah, maybe we'll start with you and then go to Michael.
Yeah, I think it largely depends on the MP themselves. They all have different preferences, but I think the more time you spend with the MP, the better you get to know their voice. And, you do enough back and forth that, I've seen, like with my current boss, almost 9 years. So like, that means 9 Christmases, 9 special events that keep happening every year. So while the first couple years may have been a little bit tougher, once we have recurring events, it gets easier to know their voice. Now, the thing that that keeps you on your toes is that their roles are always changing, right? In politics and in election cycles and that. So I would say it's just a constant back and forth, texts, emails, and even just spending time speaking with them about a particular post that you're planning for social media, for example, or if you're trying to write a press release, you go over like the key points first, and then you're set up for more success when you're actually doing the first draft. But I will say, when I do just get a first draft approved, I'm pretty excited about it. There can be a lot of back and forth, and that shouldn't discourage anyone. I know that MPs want to, project their exact voice to their constituents, and that's very important to them. So obviously they're going to look at it through a microscope. So
yeah, see, Sarah's boss is way more forgiving than mine. I don't do anything unless I get approval. But she's right. I mean, it's the longer you spend with somebody, the more you understand the way they think, and you can guess at what it is that they might like. I can honestly say I've never had a social media post that I drafted that went up without changes. And you at the end of the day, you're here to serve the MP, and you're here to serve the party, and you have to make sure everything is aligned, and most importantly, that your boss is happy with what you're putting out.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, I've got some more questions prepared, but we've got some great ones here in the chat. So let's dive in there because we want to know what people have questions. So let's go to Claudia here. What do you view as the skill set that makes a successful staffer? So that's sort of in general. And Michael, how about you? What do you think? What you've seen, I'm sure, lots of staff come and go over the years on the Hill.
Somebody's going to do what I tell them to do. That's it. Just do it. Don't ask questions.
Unquestioning, unflinching loyalty. Got it. Okay, next.
Yeah.
All right.
You want somebody that's easy to get along with, somebody that can take direction. So that's not, we're lucky in our office. Our boss is extremely amazing and listening to what everybody has to say. And so, you may have a differing opinion on a matter. And sometimes the boss may agree with that, and sometimes somebody else may not. But at the end of the day, once the boss makes a decision, you all got to get on board, and you've all got to go that way. And I mean, it can be hard sometimes because politics is extremely passionate. It can be a blood sport, and you may disagree with something. But I guess somebody who can roll with the punches and know that, just because something didn't go your way one day doesn't mean it won't the next.
Okay, Sarah.
I would say I agree with all of those points. And I would also add to that, Every MP, especially conservative MPs, are trying to build a better Canada. That's what we're trying to do together. And our number one goal of the team. Oh, am I echoing here? I
No,
will turn this
good.
down. Okay, I was echoing in my own feed. Our number one goal as a team is to make your boss look good while doing it, right? So everything that you do as a staffer, and I would even argue outside of work, is a reflection of the team. So discretion is very important. And one thing that Rick Norlock told me when I first started working for him is consider every conversation that you're having on the phone or even in your office with the door open is being recorded and could be like front page of the CBC, right? Like you have to act. What's that old quote that I love? It's dance like no one's watching, email like it will one day be allowed in a deposition. So emailing too, that's all important to know that that could one day become public. So just be very cautious and careful about what your back and forth is even in your own office. And
I could
every
just, if I could
sorry
just jump in, Sarah. Yeah, like it's everything you say, especially in Ottawa, you
Mhm.
have to imagine somebody else is listening and can use that against you, or use that against your boss, or use that against the party. And it's not, if you're interested in politics and you want to be a conservative staffer, it's not a 9 to 5 job. You don't roll in at 9 and then pack up your crap and head home at 5 o'clock. You go out for dinner with your partner. You're out on the weekends with your kids, or you're at a football game or a baseball game. There is always somebody sitting beside you, behind you, in front of you that is listening to everything you say. And it's, it sucks sometimes, but yeah, it's 24/7.
Yeah. One of the stories when I first became a staffer in 06, in the training session that Keith Beardsley was doing at that point in time, like he said that the whole reason that the Conservatives were ready, on such sure footing for the 05-06 election that was going over Christmas is because a group of Conservative staffers were sitting quietly in a booth at a local bar while Liberal staffers were all drunk and complaining about how their Christmas vacations were all canceled, and they needed to be in town. So it was, yes, like that's a very obvious, like one of the most obvious, instances of that, but 100%. And once I did that, I just became very aware how important it was to be quiet when I was, at a restaurant. And just, you talk about the kids, you talk about other things, you don't talk about work, because I've heard a lot of chatter, through the years of just people who are just sitting there talking to their friend, thinking that it's, they don't know who we are as staffers next to them.
Mhm.
Michael kind of touched on this, but our friend Blaine from Alberta had a question here. And I wanted to just pose this again, and maybe we'll start with you, Sarah, because Michael's touched on it. But how do you balance your own personal views on an issue if they differ dramatically from that of your MP? I don't know if you've heard, I'm sure you and your boss are simpatico on everything. Have you heard about other staffers who maybe don't agree perfectly with their boss and how that
Yeah,
goes?
I will say, like, I've worked for 4 different MPs in my time. So I can say that at times I have disagreed with my boss on a given issue. I think, too, my views have evolved a lot over the years. Maybe it's just seeing all sides of the coin is important. But you know what I try to do, even if they've got their mind made up, and I guess I would be they call me like the boldest one in the office for this, because the others don't necessarily want to rock the boat, but I will present the other side and see, sometimes it doesn't change the direction, or it doesn't change what we'll do, but I think it's good to look at all angles and before we proceed with anything. So yeah, it's tough, and I think it's something that comes with more time on the Hill. As a younger, greener staffer, I wasn't really speaking out. It might take time to build trust with your boss, and then you'll feel more comfortable maybe disagreeing a little bit.
Yeah, excellent. Sarah, and I just got a word from our tech folks that your mic is a little bit hot. So I don't know if you can turn it down just a smidge. That would be all right. So
Okay.
not a huge deal. Michael, back to you. If there's anything else you wanted to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, it's, I guess ultimately you want to try and find somebody that you can work with that holds similar views to you. When you're starting out, it's super hard because you don't know what that person is like. They don't know what you're like. I think the most important thing is to try and get a sense when you're doing the interviews or talking to that MP, what they're like as a person, because that will often dictate how they'll treat you and how that will affect your working relationship as well. And so if you get a good sense, you leave an interview and you're thinking, wow, like this is a really nice person, you're probably set. And they may not agree with anything you think politically, but at least you'll have the opportunity to get your foot in the door, build your resume, and then look to work for an MP that you think matches you or and what you believe in.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm going to put up two questions here. First one's from Andrew, and then the second one ties into it. It says, what are some top parliamentary resources you can recommend that took you a while to realize the usefulness of? So something that maybe as you went on, you realized it was more helpful.
I call her Sarah.
What's that? Oh,
Sarah
yeah.
Honey.
Yeah.
Put your email in the
number up here, and that's it.
You always knew how useful I was, Bailey. Come on.
Yes.
From day one. And then I'm going to put up Jazz's question, second question here as well in the chat. It says, so prior to working on Parliament Hill, what would you require or recommend someone to study or read? And is a degree mandatory to work on the Hill? So forget who we're at. I think, Michael, it might be your turn to go first here.
I can't even remember what the first question was.
What are some top parliamentary resources? That was the one you made the joke on. So
Sarah Honey. Sarah Honey, that's not a joke.
Not a joke. You're right. My apologies. Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, the website, there is this amazing website called Legis Info, and it has everything you could possibly want to know about a bill, its process, journey through the House of Commons and the parliamentary process. And it was probably 4 or 5 years before I figured out, like, oh, I can look this up from the 38th session or the 42nd session, and it's got everything there. And from there, you can get links to speeches, debate at committee is just phenomenal. So if you get a chance, Legis Info, take a look at it. It's got absolutely everything. And then secondly, I'm just eating up all your time here, Sarah. Honestly, attach yourself to the smartest kid in the room. Like I attach myself to Sarah, right? You want to build a network of people who actually know where you can find what it is you need to find, because inevitably you will be asked a question. Do you know this? And if your automatic response is yes, absolutely, I know it, and you have no clue, you're screwed. But if you answer with, I don't know that, sir, but I know somebody who does, it can become invaluable.
Excellent. Great. Sarah?
Yeah, for this question, I would just build on what Michael was saying and say, I'm going to give Connie Pearsall a shout out. I don't know if she's on this or not, but she was down the hall from me when I started full time on the Hill, and she'd worked here a while, and she was the one I would always go to with questions, because it's like a whole different bubble and world. And I wouldn't be ashamed to have, like then I would act like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what to do. And I wouldn't. But then I'd go down the hall and ask Connie, like, find your Connie, find someone even in your office or in a different office, or even just a group of staffers that you can, go back and forth with. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of things that happen in offices they're happening across the Hill. The other resource I would use is the Library of Parliament. They have researchers who work there full time. And so if you need some research done, especially quickly, you can ask them for something and they'll get it to you fast. Like, I guess that's part of working smarter, not harder.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just want to give a shout out to my mentor, because the same thing, Sarah, it was my second day on the Hill, and my chief of staff came in and she said, quick, you need to write a question for QP. And I'm like, okay, I got this. And I'm sitting there going, how the hell do I write a question for question period? Like, I have no idea. So I run out of the office, I go around the corner, and I run into Marion Furnette's office. And Marion was so gracious with her time, and she was working on the leaders' questions at the time. And she was like, yeah, give me 5 minutes and then I'll get to you. And I was like, yeah, like no one who knows that a question is 35 seconds, right? Like, you started a job, you don't necessarily know that. who knows that a statement is 1 minute? I had no clue. But yeah, I didn't want to say, excuse me, how long should it be? It just, but yeah, find a Marion,
Period. You talk
find a
about.
Mrs. Pearsall. Yeah.
I want to give a shout out there to Viru. Thanks, Viru, who's put the Legis Info website there in the chat for folks who'd like to see it. I'm going to circle back to Jazz's question though too, just about asking, is a degree mandatory prereq to working on the Hill? Just what would each of you say to that? Sarah, you start.
I would say, I mean, my degree isn't in political science; it's in communications. I would say a degree is great to have that teaches you the structure and the writing and the ability to research and that. But what I really learned by baptism of fire, I'd call it, you know. So I think that having a degree sometimes is a prerequisite, but most of the things that I've learned about politics have been on the fly, in the moment. And that's one quality that you need in a political staffer, is someone who's going to think on their feet and be, you know, adaptable to change. Like if you like the same thing every day at work, like Parliament Hill isn't it for you, right? Like it's always changing and you have to adapt with it. In terms of mandatory studying or reading, it's a good one. I think it'd be good to go back through political biographies, specifically, you know, if you're looking to, you know, get into conservative politics, which we are. And I'd look at, you know, former conservative prime ministers. Like, I don't want to recommend any certain one because there's so many resources out there, but I would look into that, and just knowing, like, I guess a good starting place would be Stephen Harper's books. Like Right Now, that's a really good one if I were to pick something specific. But, you know, you can look at any of the former PMs for inspiration for sure, and for some learning about conservative principles.
Yeah. Michael, anything else you wanted to add in on that?
I'm going to disagree with Sarah. I don't think you need a degree. I do have one. I did graduate.
Defensive,
still defensive about it.
I'm starting to think I should look that up.
Oh, please don't Google my name. Don't type me into the Grok. Is that on the Twitter now, or you kids call it the X?
I'm live tweeting this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything you said, I do agree with. It's important in the sense that you can learn structure when you're building whatever it is you get your degree in. If you were going to have a degree, I would say probably communications at this point. Mine's in poli-sci. But yeah, the degree wasn't really useful for me. What was useful was being able to listen to what people said, adapt, and trial and error. And when you make a mistake, don't be afraid to admit you made a mistake, but try not to screw it up again, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know, a degree not necessary. When we're hiring here, we look for personality. Who's going to fit with the team that we have? You know, can they write? Can they read? Can they analyze something and condense it? All important aspects, but the paper on the wall doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I guess I'll just chime in there too to say, I mean, I think it's good if you have the degree as well, but it's definitely not necessary. And I know because I've offered jobs in various roles that I've had to people who do not have degrees, because once your foot is in the door and if you're shown that you can, you know, keep up with what's going on and be a valuable member of the team, it becomes very important for the team to try to keep you and make you one of us, you know, but, you know, a lot of those folks, I think,
axe the tax.
Oh no.
So a lot of folks go back and finish because I think, you know, it is smart to do. I mean, but definitely jobs are offered to folks without a degree. So I'd like to go to Liam O'Brien's question, a legendary staffer kind of in his own right here. So Liam says, great advice from Michael and Sarah, some of the best. And I see Matthew Conway was in the chat as well, singing both your praises. Can you speak to the importance of commitment to our larger Tory team, a feature that makes it a little different than other types of jobs with similar duties, and says, keep up the good work. So I think I understand that correctly, I mean, you obviously you have your primary loyalty is to the member of parliament who's hired you, but we are part of a team, and you're working together as a caucus, you're working together as a party. Sometimes there's going to be, again, I've heard of this, never experienced it, but I've heard that sometimes there can be some friction and so on. How do you folks handle that? And who would like to take the first crack at that one? Yeah.
Bailey.
Or should we thank Liam for his question and move on and just not answer?
Liam. So there's another guy that I used to constantly bug to the point where he stopped taking my calls. I'm sorry, dude. I really apologize. But yeah, you want to find people that are helpful, intelligent, and have the background. It's hard because I guess I've always tried to be as loyal as possible to the person that I'm working for, because at the end of the day, that's where your paycheck comes from. But then you are part of a larger movement. And so if you know that your boss is about to do something extremely stupid, you have to try and stop them. And if you can't stop them, you have to let somebody else know, regardless of whether or not that's going to affect your relationship with your current boss. And you have to hope that when you do that and it happens, that they'll understand that you weren't only doing it because you weren't trying to rat them out, you were doing it for their benefit as well. And most people will see that. You want to be able to toe the party line, but you also want to make sure that the person that you work for is comfortable doing that. And because we're such a large country and it's so diverse, I mean, something that somebody's writing in Ottawa that fits here and fits in the bubble doesn't necessarily fit in Atlantic Canada, on the shores of Grand Bank, or in BC on the island, right? It's a tightrope, and you have to be able to walk it without losing trust, having your boss lose trust in you.
Great, Sarah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Michael. And I would say it's a big blue tent. I know that's an old adage, but it really is true. We have more diversity of opinion in our party, and we are open to more diversity of opinion than any of the other parties. And with that comes, lots of disagreements. But if they can happen privately, that's always better. Having worked as the National Conservative Caucus Coordinator, I can tell you that in caucus meetings, there's a lot of grievances aired to the current leader and a lot of things that get discussed and sometimes hashed out. And that's the best case scenario. When our, infighting ends up on National Newswatch, that's exactly the result we don't want. So I would say, just like Bailey said, anything that you can do as a staffer to prevent this is, it's invaluable to the party unity.
Yeah. If I could just go back, Steve, just what Sarah said made me think of something too. And because I started off this talking about how important communications is, and social media just dominates everything now. Take a breath. When that tweet comes out, we still call them tweets.
Yeah.
When the tweet comes out, or the post on the Facebook or on the Instagram, just take a second. You don't need to respond right away. Your boss doesn't need to respond right away. Draft it, be angry, be whatever, but then don't post it. Just take a minute and then, let it simmer and come back to it in a little while. Because
you can even sleep on it.
Yeah, even sleep on it. Like, it's just, airing of the grievances, no fun, especially in public.
Yeah. And I think I'd just like to chime in on that as well. I guess, it is, like as Sarah said, when she was working in caucus and people would, she'd see the discussion, the frank discussion that's there. I think it's the loyalty factor about when you're giving advice. To me, it's like, as long as it's something that your boss is mulling over, and sometimes, this is a job of highs and lows, and it's highly charged, and it's a passionate, line of work. And so, like Michael said, sometimes you just want to jump in, and we're looking at things from within the bubble, honestly, as staffers, because we're staring at everything so closely But I would say a bunch of work has been created because, yeah, someone didn't take that breath. Whereas if they just talk to the person the next day, it already simmers down a bit and you realize like the world didn't end and we could have had this conversation, but instead we one up the one up the one up. But I remember getting asked for that advice once about what point in time do you kind of bring other people in the loop if your boss is considering doing something. I said, my loyalty to my boss is 100%, like if they want to come and talk to me because they're mulling something over, they're thinking about something, a direction, do they need to, whatever, even something as big as should I step down from my position, that's a private conversation between the two of us. As soon as they are about to do something that's going to enter into the public, sphere that's going to affect, then that is where I have a responsibility to the broader team to ring the bell and have the conversation and say, hey, we need to let people know that this is happening. And yeah, it's not always comfortable for sure. So
I would say call the leader's office before they call you would be a good.
That's actually a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, I will. You told me not to mention any names of what I worked for, but I'm going to throw this out there anyway. I was waiting in my office in Center Block. It was 10 to 8. My boss usually got in at 7:30, and he wasn't there. And then committee started at 8:30, and it was 8:15, and then it was 20 after 8. And I was in full panic, and I'm calling, and we had a thing called the BlackBerry back then, and I was sending him a pin.
You're pinging him?
Yeah, I was pinning him.
Nice.
And
I meant business.
Calls back right away, and he's like, Michael, stay in the office. I've got the worst news ever. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, his dad has died, right? Or something tragic has happened. And so he gets into the office and he's visibly upset and he's shaking. And he's like, Belinda Stronach is crossing the floor.
Oh.
and insensitive. I am an insensitive bastard because the only thing in my head was, can I swear? Can I say fuck? Because I was like, fuck, I have to call Ray Novak now. But I just, the personal aspect of it and the devastation and knowing the relationship that they had. But in that moment, my mind went straight to, I need to let Ray know, because if the leader gets caught on this without him knowing, it's going to be devastating for my party, not just my boss. And it was clearly already devastating for my boss. Yeah. But yeah, it's a judgment call. And if you work with the person long enough, you have that rapport where you can tell, yeah, you're going to be pissed at me for doing this, but I have to. So.
And how do you, is that an education process in and of itself for an MP to understand what the role of staff is and what you're, you made the joke earlier about Michael, you're looking for someone to do whatever you say, but there might be some who kind of feel that that's the role of staff, eh?
Yeah. So I guess I've always approached it as, if I'm not going to do it, I shouldn't expect you to do it. Mm-hmm. But if you want to work on the Hill and you want to stay around for any length of time, then I feel like, and I could be totally wrong, but I feel like you kind of have to approach it as being a concierge. You want to give your boss the best personal experience possible, the best possible advice, and you want to be able to do everything. And so if it's like, can you run down to the cafeteria and get me a hot dog? Yeah, I'll go down and get you a hot dog, and I will know that you want mustard and not relish, or ketchup and not mustard and relish. And so little things like that. And I've worked with a lot of people who, over the years, the longer they've got here, it can go to your head. Like, it can absolutely go to your head, and your head just balloons. And it's like, oh, look at me, I work on Parliament Hill. But you've got to always try and stay grounded, and never ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself.
Yeah, is there anything to add to that?
Just this core memory surfaced when you were talking about that, because I was an intern at, I could say it now, as an old PMO. And anyways, there was over in the Horseshoe, the part of Center Block that's the Prime Minister's office, which we will be in again soon, hopefully. There was a few staffers, not even the PM, wanting to have a meeting, and there had been a bunch of those office rolly chairs rolled into one of the offices where they were trying to have a meeting, and they had called the interns over to move the chairs. And I'm never going to forget it, because we were across the street in the Langevin block. It's like, okay, we had to scurry over there, move those chairs. And I thought, wow, the ego on these people. And it made me think, like, I got to keep this in check. Like, now 15 years later, like, I still think back to that sometimes. So I think maybe having those experiences too makes you think, like, okay, like, to stay in this, to not look arrogant to my, subordinates, you sometimes have to do the team player jobs and roll some chairs,
I'm afraid that is something that's definitely crossed party lines. I don't think that ego is limited to any one party stripe for sure. I'm going to switch gears completely here. I'm going to just paraphrase the question here from someone named Frenchie, who's out in BC. And the question talks, this is very, very practical, but I think, something that would matter to staffers. Do you have any advice on how to manage a high volume of emails and events? So everyone in the office, including the MP, are new. They're kind of working to maybe get Civic Track up and running, but they're still kind of looking at that, and everything's still getting set up. But what software do you use? What things do you like? What have you tried that didn't work? Anything that you can share with Frenchie or other staff members who are looking to be as efficient as they can in the inbox? Michael.
I just have Mohan do it.
Yeah.
No,
back on the other question. Yes. I wouldn't touch that.
So in our office, we try to prioritize. If everybody in the constituency comes first. So, we get hundreds of emails every day from people from across the country who want to talk about mental health issues or addiction issues, 988, all kinds of things, anything and everything.
Because that's your MP's shadow critic role, right?
Yeah. So we're addictions now. Yeah. And then, just people who are like, oh my God, I can't believe the tariffs. Like, how's this going to, and so, but prioritize the people that elect you first. Always for us, that's it. Make sure your constituents are happy, because at the end of the day, you need to get reelected if you want to make a difference. And then from there, it's what can we do, and where can we fit it in? Because I think the start of this was things I wish I knew before I started. And one of the things I wish I knew was how hard MPs actually work. Like, it is not a 9-to-5 job. My boss is often in the office at 7 a.m. before us and leaves at 11:30 at night. And, it's not just 1 hour a day during question period. You've got committee, you've got house duty, you've got private members business. Like, it's just nonstop. So constituents first, always.
Yeah. Sarah, how about you?
I would say folders, like subfolders in your inbox, are your best friend. Like, once I started to really organize everything, because Outlook has that thing where you search a keyword that's definitely an email, and then it's gone into the abyss. Those, that'll be your best friend if you organize. And then, of course, with the MP account, a lot of junk comes through there. So, of course, we have to have someone in our office that's managing that all the time. And if that person's out sick, someone is covering that, because although a lot of garbage will come through there, a lot of important stuff will too, that will need to be actioned off into someone else in the office, and often directly to the MP themselves. So I would say just staying on top of that. And the software we use is Maximizer. Okay. We did use Nation Builder. It may have improved in the meantime, but we had some issues, I guess, with it. I won't go, taking them down or anything, but
I personally am a Nation Builder fan, but not necessarily for case management. I use it for a lot of other things.
Yeah, there you go. That's
okay, thanks for that. I'm going to go to Chad's question here. This one's a bit more personal in nature, but how would you, or can you place boundaries on family time versus work time as a Hill staffer?
Ooh.
Sarah, nice easy one for you.
That is a tough one. I mean, I did find, you know, as when I was just a single person, a lot was put on me. Working in a team where people were all married with young families. Now I'm the one that's married with a young family, just had a baby. Of course, I'm on mat leave right now, but I'll have to manage, do the work-life balance thing, and going back. And I think what it comes down to, and what I was doing even before I went on leave, and just spending time with my husband. And by the way, even if you're single, you deserve time to yourself. You deserve those boundaries. I would look at something that came in, and sometimes it comes in at night after work hours, but it's not actually urgent. Maybe whoever sent it, whether it be someone in your office or your boss, just wants to remember to send it on to you. And you don't actually need to action it till the following day. You know, you just need to look at things and say, is this urgent? Do I have to deal with this right now? And if that answer is no, then wait till the next business day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. As a social media manager as well, I was getting pretty bogged down in monitoring social media every single weekend because, as we know, the comments don't stop, and someone can come. You know, we have the recurring trolls. I'm sure everyone does. They'll come and comment on the weekends, and if no one monitors that, it just stays there for a couple of days. So one weekend a month, we actually will take turns in monitoring social media, so that I would get a break for one weekend a month. I think that's a good practice to have in every office.
Yeah, that's great. Michael?
I had a boss who, if they sent a pin or, a personal message, we had to respond within 6 minutes. So I wasn't very good at the boundaries. My wife still married me, so that's good news. I think, everything Sarah said. You've got to be able to set those boundaries, and it's difficult, especially if you're the person in the office who isn't married or doesn't have kids, because the old guy is going to be like, well, I got to get home and take the kids to swimming, or it's going to be, I've got hockey practice, so you're going to have to do it. When you're starting out, it's super hard. And you know what, I used to spend 12, 14 hours a day on the hill when I first started. And I didn't mind because I was a lot younger and I just love being here. And, I walk to work in the morning and I look up and I see the Peace Tower and think, I'm the luckiest person alive. I have the best job in the world, but it can take a toll, physically and mentally. If you're here that long, you need to be able to set those boundaries, and you need to find a boss that's going to accept them. I've been super lucky. Everyone that I've worked for, especially after I had kids, it was like, look, my family comes first. And if I get a call and William's sick or Victoria needs something, I'm going to go and do that. I won't leave you. I'll make sure all my crap is done, or I'll take it with me and do it while I'm with them. But being honest and saying you have extra responsibilities, very important, and making quality time with your partner, very important. I started putting my phone away during dinner time. And sometimes it's hard to do if something's breaking or there's something happening and that your boss expects you to monitor that. But it's 40 minutes a night where I'm just not available.
I have to say, I suck at this area, and as someone who's kind of not by design, but just ended up working on campaigns really since 2015. It's not been good. And there's been times I worked on a provincial campaign last year, and by the end of that, I had pretty much destroyed my health and fitness, and it was not good. But one of the things I'm trying to learn and trying to implement too is just to kind of say, balance is not there's no certainly in this line of work, you can't realistically promise anyone, including yourself, that you're going to be in at 9 and out at 5 and so on. So balance is more of looking at a 3-month span, a 6-month span, or a year span to say, okay, it's going to be really intense around budget time, and when we come back in September, but there's the Christmas season, or the summer recess, I am going to make sure that I get this vacation booked to go with friends or family here or there, and just looking at the bigger picture. And for those who are in relationships or married or have kids, of trying to communicate what that expectation is going to be. Yeah, the next month is going to be pretty crazy, but let's look forward to this and let's have that time. And again, I have not hit that out of the park by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely I do want to reiterate what was said by both of you. It is not fair for the single person in the office to take everything because everyone else has got to get somewhere. And that is sort of an implicit thing that I think can happen a little too easily.
If you are listening to this, that's BS. Don't listen to him.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. I don't want Cam to get any bad ideas.
Except in your situation. Understood. Okay. We're coming up close to the end here. There was a question from Claudia I wanted to get to just about language requirements for staffers on the Hill. Do you need to be fluent in French? Michael.
Je ne parle pas français. Je suis un bonhomme de neige. Je vais laver mes éponges.
It'd be nice to be a snowman today, wouldn't it?
The last one though, je vais laver mes éponges.
Oh.
I'm going to wash my sponges. I learned that from the makeup girl at CPAC.
Okay.
So yeah, no, bilingual, not important.
Well, all right, maybe not going to go that far.
No, in my office.
Please don't clip that. Okay. Sarah?
I'd say that, depends on the riding that you're you're representing, and but I would say in the long run, it's important. And as you know, in politics, not a whole lot of job security. So if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking you might want to work in a ministry and then head down into the department when things get a little bit rocky, you're going to need French. So it's something that I wish that I had more of. And just so you know, the House Commons does offer French courses. It's a little tough because it's a lot of French all at once. Like the one that I took was a few weeks of mornings of French, and then you have to get permission from your boss, and that's okay usually, right? But then you also have to do all of the work that you missed while you're in French class. Then you have to go home and do the French homework and come back. And yes, it is a lot, but I do think it's worthwhile.
All right.
I was joking, and then I'll just put both of my children are in French immersion. So
that's great.
Knowing another language is extremely important.
Yeah.
Do we use it every day here on the Hill in our office? No, I work for a BC MP, so not necessarily. But if I was in New Brunswick or Atlantic Canada or in Quebec or even here in Ottawa, yeah, it would be extremely important. And every notice that goes out, people say we're looking for people that are bilingual. Mm-hmm. So definitely a benefit if you do have another language.
All right, I'm going to just give you a couple, and these ones could be topics in and of themselves. Rapid fire here, just in our last couple minutes. What do folks need to know about committee? What is committee, and what do they need to know about it if they're coming to work for an MP? Sarah?
Committee's where the real work gets done. It's it can seem boring, it can seem too intensive, and it's a lot of work, right? To prepare for committee, you have to do your research on the current topic and prepare questions for the witnesses, study the witnesses. A lot of MPs like to have a staffer go with them to committee, the legislative assistant. And if you're the shadow minister, it's even more work, right? Because then you're heading up the planning for the questioning and the strategy and working with the other parties. It's its own beast, I would say. It's definitely a learning curve to support your boss in committee, but it actually is it can be, depending on the committee, very rewarding work.
Okay, Michael?
Nothing to add to that, although I did have to manage status of women once, and it was not a fun committee. It was not a fun committee to be on. And so this was supposed to be rapid fire.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm going to stop there.
That's fair.
Environment committee, also not fun.
I'm going to let you stop there. Last question I had, just rapid fire. And then I'm going to ask if you have one piece of advice, but so you can start putting that in the back of your mind for new staffers. But what about your connection to back in the riding? Because we've been talking about the Hill staff, there's also constituency staff. How does that interplay in a nutshell? I know that's, again, could be a whole other topic.
I don't know. For us, it's extremely important. Everything we do in Todd's mind is for the constituents and then for the country. And it's extremely important for Todd that we, as an Ottawa-based staff, know what the people are like and what the riding is like. And so we'll go to the riding once or twice a year, take in some of the events, do roundtables in different areas just to get a sense. And yeah, it's extremely important, the interplay between the two offices.
Okay. Sarah?
Yeah, it's super important as Hill staff to know your riding, even if you're not working in it, because it's easy to make mistakes if you do not know the area or the makeup of the area or what's important to people, the top 3 industries, let's say. Like, you should know these things before you're working on householders and 10%ers and really getting to the important issues. But I would agree with Michael, like, the constituents are number 1 for any successful MP.
Is visiting the riding kind of the best way to get to know it, or is this something you can study from Ottawa? Like, what's your quick?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you do get to know the riding a lot better once you're there on the ground. So I would definitely recommend that to every Hill staffer, and even that interest in visiting the riding. I think that all of your bosses would be very impressed with.
I do think it's important to get to the riding. Again, and not only your own riding, if you can go to other ridings and see what it's like, just to get a sense of the vastness of the country and the differing opinions and how we all mesh together.
Excellent. So final question, if you had just one piece of advice, is there something that comes to mind that you'd like to impart to folks who might be looking to get into staffing or relatively new to it?
Find a Sarah.
Find a Michael.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. My number 1 piece of advice would be to get uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is every single role that I have stepped into on the Hill, I have not been prepared for every single aspect of that or known how to do every single aspect, and I've had to learn on the fly. And on that same vein, set goals for yourself. Like, look to your colleagues who are doing different roles than you, and you think about your career and succession planning and that. And actually, I used to look to the national caucus coordinator's role and think, like, I would love to do that job. And then you can get to know the person, ask them how their ins and outs of their day is. That's just an example. But I think if you really think about your job as, what do you want to do with your career? What are you interested in? What do you want to step into? And it's going to make you uncomfortable, but it's so worth it.
Excellent. Now I'm nervous. If Sarah starts asking me about my job, I'm toast.
Yeah.
I'm coming for
That's
you.
No good. Everything Sarah said, and volunteer. It's, for me, it's if you can get your foot in the door. You might not necessarily have a job, but if you can volunteer in your constituency office, if you can volunteer in your MP's office, if you're in a different area of the country and you come to school in Ottawa, get involved, join your campus club, join your local riding association, take a role in that association. Don't just be a looky-loo member. Like, get involved, and yeah, good things happen when people get involved and volunteer.
Excellent. Well, we're going to leave it at that. So Sarah, Michael, thank you so much for being here and sharing your collective wisdom and experience tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope it's been helpful to all of you who are watching live and are watching this on the replay later on. We just want to see conservative staffers, thrive across the country. I see people from New Brunswick, Alberta, and BC all on here. So we're very grateful that you took time to join us, and thankful for you both as panelists to be on here tonight. We'll be sending this out via email. If you registered, you'll get it. And stay tuned for our next webinar. We'll get that word out as well. Thanks again to our sponsor, Interseed Communication, and we'll hope to see you soon. So thanks for joining us here tonight. Take care.